from the Cyber Hub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the Cyber Hub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Mr. Erich Kron, what's happening, brother?
What's going on? It's been a while.
It has. I feel like I've missed out on so much in the world of security, but you're here to catch me up, right?
Something like that, at least on one topic.
At least on one topic, which I think is a very important topic, by the way. I think business email compromise, CEO fraud, especially after RSA, right? After big events, that's when we typically see the highest number of CEO fraud. I was actually reading some things too. The CEO over at KnowBe4 had put out in one of his newsletters. It goes, typically after big major events is where we see CEO fraud be more relevant than before.
It's kind of funny how things get cyclical like that. Certain times of the year you see certain things, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's not like it's not like there's ever a lull in BEC or CEO fraud attacks. That's just kind of a constant thing.
Yeah, I feel like, well, there kind of is though, right? You typically see CEO fraud. It's got peaks. Like look at the Verizon DBIR, right? When they talk about kind of like, phishing is year round.
Yeah.
Gathering intelligence, year round. Social engineering, year round. CEO fraud, what you're about to talk about, I think people don't understand what a surgical strike it is. So,
yeah.
So talk a little bit about what people know here what business email compromise is. So we're not going to go into the basics, right? If you don't know what business email compromise is, I suggest you go to your favorite search engine and do a search. I was going to use a word that starts with a G, but did you see me like comprehend?
Yes.
Like I shouldn't probably say that.
Yeah.
Right. So just grab, go to your favorite search engine, put business email compromise. It'll give you a paragraph, 5 sentences of what it is. Now you understand it. Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the seasons of it or kind of where you're seeing the trends now in 2022 and the last 2 years, kind of like transition to a hybrid work environment.
Yeah. So, what's interesting is BEC and CEO fraud. They're the same thing. If you don't know, you don't have to search engine that one. Okay. Basically same thing, depending on what region you're in. But what's interesting is it's such a broad umbrella, actually, of things that it covers. It covers everything from the wire transfer fraud, which is what most people associate it with, right? That's that executive saying, hey, I need you to wire out whatever, $100,000 and stuff. That happens all the time. But it also covers things like that gift card fraud that we see a lot. Whenever I do talks about BEC and I'm like, how many people have seen somebody asking somebody to go out and buy a bunch of gift cards? Well, it inevitably hands go up all over the room. It's so common these days. But like W-2 fraud is also a BEC type. There's mortgage fraud, where basically people are going in and they're going to buy a home, and the attackers are pretending to be someone from the title company or something like that. And they're like, hey, transfer the escrow over here, your down payment here. We changed account numbers. And so people transfer money like that based on real estate transactions. And that happens commercially and residentially. It's kind of crazy how much stuff that CEO fraud covers. But one of the key things about CEO fraud is that makes it different from everything else is there's typically no link. There's no infected document. There's none of that kind of stuff that our filters try to grab and spot and do all that. None of that stuff is involved in CEO fraud. It's essentially the pure form of social engineering, which honestly, it's pretty amazing. And it's pretty wild to see what happens in these attacks and how well these folks are with respect to their preparedness for people's reactions and pushback and stuff like that.
This goes down to something you and I know very well from our time in the military, right? Lockheed Martin's, chain of why am I having a
kill chain,
right? Yep. Cyber kill chain, right? Cyber kill chain. If you look at like the first 6 out of the 7, those take the longest time, right? And then the deployment of it, the actual execution is what really takes the shortest time. But in that meantime, they're doing reconnaissance, they're studying, they're picking up habits. It's very, very fascinating to me. The way that happens.
And we leave such a digital trail these days. People don't even think about it, right? So, if you're part of like a not-for-profit here in the US, you have to do a Form 990, which is a tax form that basically tells all kinds of incredible information that's very useful for attackers about your organization, including a lot of times like your major suppliers, things like that, who you spend a lot of money with. It tells who your executives are, board members. It gives like this whole breakdown of your organization. And people don't even think about how much information is out there and things like that, not to mention LinkedIn, the other social media sites, press releases, all those kinds of things are great sources for them to do, like you said, that recon. They get together some really good information, build up a really good pretext or story, and then you're right, it's very surgical. It's a lot of times it's very, very surgical, and a lot of times it's very interactive too. Like I've seen the wire transfer thing come in where it started off as simple as, did you get my earlier message? And, the person on the other side, it's coming from a CEO. They look through their emails. They don't see anything. They're going to reply, sir, ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't get an earlier message. How can I help you? Right. And those attackers are waiting. So the reply to that tends to get a little bit aggressive. I've seen this happen several times where the reply is then something along the lines of, well, I'm doing an acquisition, or we're making a major purchase right now. We're going to lose the deal if we don't get a deposit or a good faith, payout to them. I told them that would already be done. I sent you the email. I can't believe you messed this up. I need to go back in and fix this. And in the meantime, you better get that money wired to this account, right? And it goes from something as simple as, did you get my earlier message, to this, like, the CEO, we're going to lose some deal. I'm going to get fired and all kinds of stuff. And, what are they doing? They're bam, bam, bam. They're wiring money left and right. And it's amazing how effective that is. FBI looked at things. They do pretty much annually a report. And the latest one came out. They said between I think it was June of 2016 and December of 2021, it's like $43 billion in losses to CEO fraud. That's huge.
Yeah. And that's money that's leaving our economy. And I think that's, people look at, where we bleed, and why costs of goods go up as well, and cost of services go up, is because this ends up being a part of doing business, and you nearly write it off, or look to do a write-off, and that's what it is. It's quite fascinating for me to see that, I think, Erich, because I think that number is people don't comprehend it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no one can quite understand $43 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot of zeros, man.
That's a lot of money.
It is.
That's more than that's more than some countries' GDPs.
Yep. And a lot of cases, it's not just the small companies either, that the huge ones get hit too. A couple of years ago, it was Google and Facebook, I think, got suckered by a guy. He was like a Lithuanian guy. Spun up an offshore company or companies that looked very similar to vendors that worked with them, and just started firing off invoices. They ended up paying like $100 or $120 million to this company that didn't even exist. It was just sending them invoices for the hell of it, And yeah, he got in trouble. He got busted. I think he got a couple of years in jail. But hey, you know what? If you start doing the math, 120 million, 5 years in jail. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think, I know. And let me tell you why I know, right? I don't know from personal experience. Yeah. So don't get any ideas, Erich. I saw the smile on your face. You're like, James, what do you want to tell us on the show today? No, that's not what I mean. I actually want to take this a little different. We always, from a practitioner side, right? Or from a side viewer of cybercrime, we look and we go, well, you get 5 years in jail, but you made 120 million, but you didn't net 120 million, right? Let's start off with that. You've done a whole bunch of things. You've also got to kind of, in a way, hide that money And then when you get arrested, typically they're going to seize everything they can get their hands on.
Oh yeah.
Case in point was the Chase guys, right? The guys that hacked Chase in 2014, right? They froze. The ringleader had $403 million of assets frozen. $403 million. So, and he's still not out of it. That case still isn't been adjudicated, right? He's been arrested. It's 2015. We're 2022, midway through the year. That case hasn't been adjudicated yet. It's still there. So you're paying lawyers, right?
Oh yeah.
You're paying, you're spending time behind bars. You can't do anything, right? You're under the watchful eye of the FBI, right?
Yeah. Like, your future earnings are seriously impacted
until you get hired by like a cybersecurity company or start one, right? Or start to give speaking gigs. Right. And because someone will always pay to hear someone. I mean, the Wolf of Wall Street guy, still makes money off of giving, speak. Like, I think one of his keynotes is like 30 grand or 40 grand or something like that. So the guy could do, he could clear $1 million a year just giving keynotes. Yeah. Right. I mean, that kind of stuff is, but that just shows you, crime really at the end of the day doesn't pay, because you get that stigma that's associated with you, and that stigma is very hard to rub off.
Right. And you know what? The other thing that's happening these days is we're seeing more and more groups getting busted. What I've noticed is, like, since the Colonial Pipeline ransomware thing, there's been so much focus on groups, not just ransomware, but in general in cybercrime. And these coalitions have been really doing quite a bit. I see a lot of different places where they've worked together through Interpol and different groups, and they've ended up shutting down some of these pretty significant players in the cybercrime side. Now, there's always 1 or 10 to pop right back up and take their spot right now, but it's interesting to see that. And like with ransomware, I know we're not talking about that, but Q1 was the first time we've actually seen a significant downturn in ransomware attacks. And a lot of that, I think, is attributed to everybody getting busted.
I would say that the risk, they've made the risk outweigh the reward in ransomware. I did something on the show yesterday on the practitioner brief. There was a story on Security Week of, I guess, like 40% of the people that paid ransomware got hit again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're on a database. Ransomware works kind of like a supply chain type of thing. You end up on someone's database. It's almost like if you buy something off of Facebook or Instagram, right?
Yeah.
They start retargeting you with similar products to see if you'll buy something else.
You're a known payer. Yeah.
You're a known payer. So at that point, once you're a known payer, that's it. It's game over, right? You're not going anywhere. You're a known payer. And so they get hit again. And the second and third time, if you don't pay, it gets worse. They actually, tighten the belt down and really want to go. But we're not talking ransomware. We're
talking CEO fraud, BEC.
But Nigeria, right? They've done a ton of bust. Here's my question though. Either cyber police has been really, really good, because from the time, like, Colonial Pipeline, I think that happened a year ago. What was it? April of 2021.
I'll go with that. I really don't remember the date, but okay.
It was. I think it was within the first 100 days of President Biden's administration, right? If I recall correctly, but someone in the comments could probably tell us when Colonial was, what came through. But if you take a look at that, just Colonial, and then how quickly that group got caught.
Oh yeah.
So either we knew who the group was, we've been monitoring the group, and we finally decided to take it down.
Yeah, because that was dark side.
Right. Or cybercrime is just so cyber police is just so darn good that we should retrain all police officers to be like global cyber police force, right? They can identify someone and so forth. And I feel like part of this is kind of the geopolitical game that exists within cybercrime that's really difficult to shut down.
Yeah, I think we are seeing more cooperation in different areas. I think we're seeing more of that stuff happening. Both on the BEC side, there was a Momfa who was the big player in there for a while. He got busted, and he paid a bit of a fine and stuff, but he was a major player in this stuff. He got busted. Other people have been getting busted. We're seeing these groups, even gangs, that are getting busted. The thing about BEC is it's not going to go anywhere. I don't care how many people get busted, and it's still going to evolve. And I mean, it's been going around for a long time, right? But it's going to continue to evolve, and we're seeing more tools that are going to be incredibly useful for this. And like I'm talking about deep fakes here,
Right?
I'm talking about real-time deep fakes. The FBI even released something about a group that's targeting or groups targeting people on like Zoom calls, where it looks like it's the exec and they're like, oh, my camera doesn't work and I'm having audio problems, but they're using a real-time voice changer to try to sound like that and convince those people of them. They're giving them the excuses straight up, oh, this is why my voice sounds weird. Sorry. And my video doesn't work. Or they'll use a picture of them that they pulled off the internet as a background, shot sort of thing, a static photo. And they're even targeting people in that. But as deep fakes, where we're doing real-time deep fakes, get better and better and better. Like the thing we saw, I don't know if you saw with Simon Cowell, where they had the guy singing on stage, and it was basically a deep fake of Simon doing the singing on the screen behind. That stuff's going to be real ugly when it comes to having an executive hit you up on Zoom and say, you need to send some money now.
But everything that we talk about here can be solved with good, strong internal processes and empowered employees.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. The processes are such a big deal in this too. Like I tell a lot of organizations, think about what you're doing. If somebody's going to wire a significant amount of money, and that'll vary by company, right? It may be 10 grand for one, it may be 100 for another. But make sure you have a process in place where they're going to reach out to that executive or someone on a known good phone number and say, sir, ma'am, just want to make sure this was you before I send out this 100 grand. Okay, thanks. Cool. Boom.
Well, go ahead.
Well, that is not a terribly onerous thing when it comes to something that is a significant amount of money, especially if leadership knows that this is in place for a specific reason. But that's one process right there that would stop so much of this dead in its tracks.
So agreed. I think we have two challenges, right? And this goes back to a topic you and I are very passionate about beyond BEC and cyber, right? Which is the neurodiversity within the workforce. That neurodiversity within the workforce, the idea to hire people that challenge or don't always fit in, but they're the kind of people who question everything.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tend to be the nicest people. They don't tend to be sometimes the more popular people in your org or the most liked person in your org. But when it comes bottom line to someone getting a call or an email that says, I need you to transfer $320,000 to this company now because I'm in a conference and I said we're going to close this contract by the end of the day, right? And those people end up going like, well, that's not normal and that doesn't follow procedure. And you know what? I'm going to escalate this. And you escalate it all the way up and down the chain, and you end up stopping a fraud before it takes place.
Yep.
That neurodiversity, that ability to be able to speak up, to be able to hire people that don't always seem like the right fit, but end up having the right work ethic to protect your organization, become a critical piece of what you're talking about.
There's that is definitely a point. There's also a way to accomplish some of the same thing with a good, strong culture within the organization, a strong security culture, so that people know and they feel comfortable pushing back. If the CEO says, send a lot of money, and you push back and you go, sir, ma'am, yeah, we're going to check on this real quick, and you're not worried about getting fired the whole time, right? Like that kind of a culture. I know, like in our organization, we're not huge, but we're not tiny either by all means. But if I get something from the CEO, if I get something from Stu saying, I need you to do this, that, and the other thing, and it's weird, I can certainly either walk into his office or I can pick up the phone and I can say, look, this is kind of weird. Is this really what you want to do? And he would be fine with that. I don't have to worry about losing my job for pushing back on something like that. So while it's great to have those neurodiverse people that are willing to push back, even in face of that, I think if you have a culture that knows if they do push back, they're not going to lose their job, that can accomplish many of the same things.
I completely agree with that, 100%. And I think that the only way you hire neurodiverse people, or the type of person I described right earlier, is by strong leadership. Right? There's no other way. If you don't have strong leadership, then there's no point to it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical piece of it. We do have some trivia and giveaways here.
Yeah.
I do notice that we don't have a ton of people watching. So here's what I'm going to do for this one here, because this is kind of like an off hour, but it's a new time we're trying on Fridays. And so here's what I'm going to do. In order to make this really fair and interesting for everyone, I'm going to post our 5 trivia questions on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. You'll go in and you'll answer said 5 trivia questions. The person who answers them first and correctly will get an awesome swag pack shipped directly to you.
Nice.
I've got some really cool stuff from KnowBe4, like hats, backpacks, and all kinds of swag. You've also get some really exclusive CyberHub podcast swag, including some stickers, a t-shirt, and a hat from our end as well. And something very, very special. That's for me, one of something that I've really been working on. I got these in 2020, right before COVID, as part of our event schedule that year to give out. They've been sitting around, and it's time to bring them back out and hand them out to the awesome folks here. So you'll see the trivia questions on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. You can go there and answer them. I'll post those shortly after the show is over, and we'll post them on social media with the link, and it'll be in the comments here for those that are watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. You just go to the comment section and you'll see the link there. Go take our trivia question, win some swag.
You got to wonder, James, how many organizations' media storage closets are full of pre-COVID swag still, that they're like,
I wonder how many people still have fidget spinners.
Right.
Right. Like swag that was cool in 2019 going into 2020. You're like, this is the new version. And now they're like, like I just said fidget spinner, and you just broke out laughing. You're like, oh my God, that fad.
Yeah.
Right? It made a bunch of Chinese people millionaires. But
yeah. I mean, there's also the USB drives, always a handy one.
I love those, so speaking of people that were at RSA this week, that was something common. I was like, how many USB drives did you find? And he goes, you won't believe, you walk around Moscow and you've got USB drives, on staircases. And I'm like, I wonder the researcher that placed it there is standing around. You don't even notice them, watching you pick it up, following you around the floor to see what you do with it. To only then come and say, pay me $10,000 and I'll remove all the viruses from your computer.
A couple of years ago at Black Hat, right behind our booth, there was a little organization, and they were giving away these USB keys. Now, this is, it's kind of hard to see. This is like laser cut, absolutely beautiful. And they were handing these things out at the booth, and they were a Chinese company from China. And I was like, it's beautiful. I will never plug this into anything ever.
Have you taken it apart to make sure it doesn't have like a tracking device on it?
No, it's like a solid, it's a machined and laser cut block of aluminum. I'd have to like destroy it to take it apart, which I really don't want to do. It's just kind of pretty and it's fun to talk about, right? But you just never know about these things these days. And it's kind of ironic how something like that would be given out at a security show.
Well, but it also shows you kind of the disconnect between marketing sometimes and security. By the way, it's the same disconnect between finance and accounts payable to security, to questioning, to responsibility, to so much more. All of that has some serious consequences.
Yeah. And it's a bad look sometimes when you hand out things. When I was at ISC Squared years ago, I was the director of member relations and services. When I first came on, they were going to give out a bunch of like 2 gig USB sticks, which at the time was a decent size, but they had some files already on them that would like auto run and take you to a website. And I was just like, hold on. Let's not hand these things out that have any sort of auto run that takes you anywhere. Come on now.
Yeah, we should know better. But then again, marketing and security, when you don't, and security, as a CISO, I know good security marketing from bad security marketing simply because of how the vendors interact.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's really easy. I've had vendors who've sent to our office, a letter, handwritten note that said, "We'd love 15 minutes of your time." All right. I'll give them 15 minutes. They hand wrote a letter, right?
Yep. They took the time to do it.
They took the time to handwrite a letter. I can match the time it took for them to write that letter to hear them out. Because that's the human thing to do.
Yeah.
However, and I say this strongly, right? However, there are cases where you end up getting the kind of marketing where you go, did they hire someone like with a marketing title but no industry experience, and that person did no industry research, and then they come out with handing out great USB drives or handing out stuff that no security professional would ever use? I remember someone once, I was at an event and I won like a Echo Dot or an Amazon Alexa, and they were like, "Here you go," and I was like, "Selling this for half price."
Yeah.
I'll trade you your drink tickets for this Amazon Alexa. Will anyone take this? And someone actually came and took it because there was no way I was taking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I'm not going to lie. I have one, but I have it in a very specific place that I use for very specific things. And yeah, but we don't have it in our main part of our house. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's like they're just blind to the room when it comes to the stuff that they hand out. It just doesn't make sense. So
what's your takeaway for our audience here in the about a minute and 20 seconds we have left on today's show on business email compromise and CEO fraud?
The biggest thing is just don't underestimate these actors, how good they are with this. I mean, sometimes people totally underestimate their capabilities and how good they are at getting people to take actions. Make sure that you account for this in your processes. Make sure that you're aware of this, and make sure that you have people able to spot this. Now, I always tell people, if you have a strong emotional reaction to a phone call, an email, or a text message, take a deep breath and look at it very carefully. That's where you look at the reply to address. And if there is a link in there, where does it go? But BEC being so much of just a social engineering thing, and social engineering being so reliant on strong emotional reactions, that is one of the most important things you can do for your end users, is make them just conscious of their own feelings and whether they get all riled up about something, and then take that deep breath and be more critical of it, as opposed to just being driven into that knee-jerk reaction.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Erich. Folks, thank you all for tuning in again. cyberhubpodcast.com will be posting the trivia after the audio podcast goes live. One of my producers was just texting going like, "Hey, don't put it out until we put out the audio version." So we'll touch up the audio version. Audio version will go live. Questions will go live on CyberHub Podcast, and then everyone can go there, take the trivia, win some swag. We may give one big package, or depending on how many people answer, I may give a bunch of smaller ones and get more people hooked up. So we're going to be doing this for 4 consecutive weeks. It's part of my summer kind of thing. Let's unplug on a Friday, have a fun conversation, and also do some trivia, and you guys can win some really cool swag. So
Awesome.
It's going to be a real fun summer and a Friday. Next week we'll be doing this at 11 a.m. folks, 11 a.m. Eastern. We tried 1 p.m., but 11 a.m. Eastern next week. Tune in. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, you name it, we're there. And your favorite podcast listening platform. Mr. Erich Kron, thank you so much. Good, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Great weekend, buddy.
Take care.
All right.
We love feedback. We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.